Welcome to the Bold Women Podcast. My name is Maria Weiler, and I am here with my dear friend Meryl.
Horn solo. And it's gone.
Oh, there it is. She put the trumpet back up. Oh my gosh, this makes my hips just want to twist. You know? Sheesh. My hips do lie. Sorry, Shakira. They don't move that way. Welcome, guys. Sorry. I wish I could dance well.
Did you introduce us?
I said our names.
Oh, okay.
This is a Bold Women Podcast.
Well, yeah.
You want to tell us where they can find us?
Instagram for one. YouTube, Apple Podcasts. That's it.
Well,
for now.
Check us out.
Yeah. Check it out.
So we have
check it out. You're all grown enough to know what social media is and where you can find us.
You know it.
Yeah.
You know it.
Let's get to the important stuff.
So today we are going through we're kind of going to go through a study of different women from the Bible. And the study is actually called Women of the Bible by Jean E. Siswerda. And this is a women's Bible study that I received that it literally goes through kind of like women that you don't normally hear or see or anything like that. So we're used to Esther, we're used to Ruth, but these are going to be some women who are mentioned through scripture that we just don't get to hear a lot about. So we're kind of going to go through, look at what these characters are and kind of ask some questions and see how we can grow from learning about their life. So today we are talking about the mothers of Moses. And yes, I said mothers, plural.
This is not Mormonism.
This is not Mormonism, but this is Jochebed?
That's how I say it in my mind. Tell everyone what you were thinking.
Jochebed.
That wasn't even
No, what was it?
You were saying Jochebed.
Jochebed.
But it's Jochebed. And I was thinking Jochebed.
Which sounds probably right.
I don't know.
And then Pharaoh's daughter. So we've got two women.
She's not named.
She's not named. She is just named as Pharaoh's daughter. So do you want to give us a little breakdown of who the two are?
Yes. So Jochebed, so the character of this woman is that her fierce love for her son, coupled with her faith, enabled her to act heroically in the midst of great oppression. And then the key scriptures that are referenced are Exodus 2, 1 through 10, and then Hebrews 11, 23.
Awesome.
And then we got Pharaoh's daughter, and her character is so that the Jewish people honor men and women whom they designate as righteous Gentiles. These are people who, through non-believers, have assisted God's people in some significant way. Surely, Pharaoh's daughter should top the list of righteous Gentiles, courageously and compassionately delivering a child from death, a child who would one day act as Israel's great deliverer. And the key scripture there, again, Exodus 2, 1 through 10.
Awesome. Okay, so summary of the story where these two women come into play is Pharaoh gave this order to all of his people, and the order was that every Hebrew boy that is born must be thrown into the Nile. Outrageous. So now a man at the house of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that this was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months, but when she could hide him no longer, she placed the child in a basket and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. So this is Jochebed. No, Jochebed. Okay.
Jochebed.
This is who this is. So his sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him.
We'll call her Joe.
So Joe did all those things. So she kept the child hidden for 3 months, and then she placed him in a basket among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. So, and this is Moses. So then Moses' sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. So Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and she saw the basket among the reeds and then the baby. The baby was crying, and she felt sorry for him, and she said, "This is one of the Hebrew babies." The baby's sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes," she answered, and the girl went away and got the baby's mother. So the woman took the baby and nursed him. And so this is Exodus 1:22 and then 2:1 through 9.
What an Uno reverse.
Right?
I'm going to put my kid in the river. You're going to get him, and then I'm going to figure out a way so that I can still mother him.
And basically raise him.
Yep.
To a certain age.
If that isn't God.
But God.
I don't know.
Sheesh. Okay, so at this time, we're going to kind of compare like what was going on at this time and significant moments in this time, and then look at it according to like our times and now.
Okay.
So baskets at this time, so this is what Moses would put in, was such an ordinary object, and it used, but it was used for such an extraordinary purpose. Imagine what love and care, Jochebed,
Joe.
Joe.
Let's call her Joe.
Sorry. Coated the papyrus basket with tar and pitch before placing her son within it. Few baskets throughout centuries have received such a long and careful touch.
Loving and careful.
Loving. Good call. Baskets were just one of many types of vessels used to store and carry various items in the ancient world. In the home, women used to use baskets to store household items such as fruit and bread. Brickmakers carried clay in their baskets. Travelers used them to carry the supplies that they needed for their journey. And priests used baskets to store the bread and wafers that were part of worship in the tabernacle. And that's from Exodus 29:3, 23, and 32. Typically made from plant materials, leaves, twigs, and stalks, baskets became in a variety of shapes and sizes. The smallest could be carried in one hand, but baskets just a bit larger were carried on the back or on the head and were often used to hold provisions for a trip. The disciples used 12 of these large baskets to gather up leftovers at the feeding of the 5,000 in Matthew 14:20. An even larger basket was used to let Paul escape out of a window at the wall of Damascus in Acts 9:25.
Well, all right.
Okay.
So to apply that to our life and times, God's use, it says, God's use of the ordinary to bring about the extraordinary is as much in evidence here in the early events of Exodus as anywhere in Scripture. His tendency to bring about his will through ordinary items, ordinary events, is no less at work today than it was in Joe's. If we look for the signs of his presence, we are sure to discover them.
I love that.
So,
okay, so now we're going to kind of get into some questions that dig through what this looks like. So, in your own words, can you describe, okay, actually, let me just go to this. Okay, so like looking behind the scenes, how do you think that Moses' family kept him quiet? Because there was like a siege to try to find these babies. I don't know. I just think that would be such a crazy time to think, how do I keep a newborn quiet? Or do you have thoughts on that?
I have a controversial thought.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, if it were me, what I would try and do is make sure the baby's sleeping a lot. If you think about ways that women, I guess, like in more recent times, and by more recent times, I mean just like since the United States came to be.
Right.
I remember one of the old ways that was considered to help a child with teething was to take alcohol and rub it on their gums. Keep them from being fussy and stuff. I don't know.
Could be.
Maybe they used that. Maybe it was like essential oils, so it was just like calm and peaceful and whatever. Yeah. And honestly, maybe it was just the grace of God. Right. It was because God was like, I have a purpose for this boy.
Right. That's true.
And he's going to be quiet whenever it needs to be. He needs to be quiet.
Like he can cry when maybe no one's around or hears, and then.
Or he somehow impacted the neighbors and their ability to hear. Who's to say?
Who's to say? Man, I don't know. What have you like?
But I'm like, booze them up.
I was about to be like,
what a horrible answer.
No, I'm about to be like, how do you think you would have reacted in these circumstances? Okay, clearly we got what Meryl would do.
I would try and figure out a way to like soundproof the room that I would have him in. Okay, as much as possible.
It makes me think of the movie Quiet Place, where they built like that box. Remember, if you heard the noise and the aliens would come?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That's what it makes me think of. Sheesh. Do you think you would have responded like her, or do you okay, comparing the difference, I'm thinking of what were the other mothers going through compared to like what was going on in her?
Or I mean, can you imagine like watching your neighbor's children get drug away?
Ugh.
Babies. Not toddlers, babies.
Ugh.
No. And they're just tossed into the river.
Yeah.
Like what? Can we like think about that for a second?
Like actually the morbidity and just cruelness that is.
Horrible.
And I'm just thinking one of the questions on here is, like, how do you think she felt as she walked away from the river, putting her son in there?
Ugh. Much anxiety. Much emotion. That's what I was thinking. Was like, oh gosh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Be a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't think it's easy for any woman to walk away from their child
No.
if they have to for some reason.
Yeah. And I think
Or if they feel like they have to.
right. And it makes me think of like women who put their children up for adoption who aren't able to
yeah.
care. Like I have the utmost respect. Like I cannot imagine how hard that decision is.
I would say compassion.
Compassion.
Because we don't know the
I don't.
motives.
Yeah.
Um,
What I think is really interesting is Pharaoh's daughter, how she would have been aware of the decree,
mm-hmm.
but yet at the same point, she had compassion upon this child. Like, what do you think that says about her?
I don't know. I kind of look at this almost as she's like daddy's little princess.
Mm-hmm.
And she's probably a good person, sure, but I think that also she's like kind of spoiled and like,
do you
I don't have to have a baby. I can just like remain pretty and like have this little plaything and then have somebody else like take care of it.
Okay, I was just
like
gonna
during
say,
a weird
like,
time. I don't know if it was during a time of like war or anything like that.
Yeah.
So maybe there's not a lot of men around and like
Right.
I want a baby and here's one. I'll just take it.
Well, and I was just thinking too of maybe she felt like, let me take this baby and make it my pet in a weird way.
Yeah, that's what I
but
mean.
just,
Like spoiled. She wants a little plaything. She wants something to, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, Dad's not going to turn me down.
right.
I'm
'Cause
his
I was gonna
daughter.
say,
I'm
the
his
next-
favorite daughter.
Yeah, the next
probably.
question is like, why do you suppose she was allowed to disobey her father's harsh edict? I partly wonder if he was so disassociated from her because of how, like, royal, like Pharaoh. I don't know.
Or she was his favorite daughter.
Or she
and
was his
the
favorite and-
rules for thee, but not for me.
Yeah, it's true.
Kind of policy.
Yeah. Ugh. I don't know. I just feel like so.
Because I think, I
Yeah.
think about this, and I think about in like Roman times and stuff like that, that people's like servants and stuff would sell them out if it meant that they could get some kind of reward because times were just dire or whatever. So you would think that that's the reason why I think that she was just favored, because it's like she was allowed to disobey. You really honestly think that if she was disassociated from her dad, that her servants wouldn't be like, hey,
Rat her out.
One of your own daughters is
Right.
freaking
And probably trying to gain favor with Pharaoh too.
right
Yeah.
by ratting her out.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
true.
Maybe I have that wrong, but that's kind of
No,
where my
that
mind
makes
went.
sense. Yeah. The I think that there's this part where I'm trying to put myself in Moses's mother's shoes, where I no longer have my son,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm nursing him and raising him. Yet I also know he technically is in the house of Pharaoh and going to be like not raised as an Israelite.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but then also too, like, not subject to slavery. So that I feel like there would maybe be a part of relief there of like my child wouldn't be
Right.
subject to this, but then also lineage being so huge, and is he going to understand who he is, where he comes from? I just feel like I would be so torn apart inside trying to understand. But then I look at her faith in the way of like, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And God saved him this far. He's not going to stop.
Yeah, and I also wonder, like, because it doesn't tell us like how long she was permitted to like be involved.
Right.
Like maybe it was just for a few months more,
Right.
or maybe by the time he hit the age of 1, they just stopped breastfeeding or whatever. So it's like, we don't need you anymore. Thanks for your time.
Weren't like,
You
and
know.
this is going to be a like, I might be wording it weird, but like milkmaids were a thing. So like if
Well, yeah. So
you
they
would
were
just-
like, it's a Hebrew kid. Find a Hebrew woman. Why would I?
to like nurse him.
Yeah. She had plenty of other like non-Hebrew
Right.
women under her. So
Right. That from that.
yeah.
The I thought it was interesting too how scripture says like Moses became her son when talking about Pharaoh's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And that I just think of like what that would feel like. I don't know. Like would Joe feel like she's losing her son, or do you feel like she just had a spirit of faith about her the whole time?
I think, I don't know. I don't know. It's too bad we can't talk to her.
I know.
But, I don't know. Maybe she just kept praying over him and stuff, because I would think, I don't know. I wish there was more that we
I
knew
know.
about her story, just to kind of know, like, okay, did she go on and have like more children? And it was kind of just like, you know, it's not that she didn't stop thinking about him or stopped praying over him in his life or whatever. But
I'm curious when the decree ended.
oh, we're Googling it now.
Okay. When did the decree end for Pharaoh?
I would say Exodus 2.
Children death, maybe? Oh, nope. Maybe it had something to do. Oh, here. How long did the Pharaoh kill? There we go. We're looking.
Okay. What is SOTA 12B? SOTAH.
Where is that?
Right click the link above that, the first
Oh.
line, and then open that in a new tab.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
What is SOTA 12?
SOTA 12B.
What incarnation? Oh, it's
Oh,
Hebrew.
It's Hebrew. Interesting. My opinion matters. Okay, so per this, whatever it is, it looks like it's
like
written in
the
Hebrew.
Torah or something, maybe.
Something. This is saying that.
Hold on, let me find out what the SOTA is.
Yeah, what is it? Because according to this, it's saying that the decree ended, was canceled as soon as Moses was placed in the water. And it says, Pharaoh's astrologers saw that the savior of the Jewish people would be stricken by water. Therefore, they arose and decreed, every son that is born you shall cast into the river, Exodus 1:22. They thought that their vision indicated that Moses would be killed in the water. Once Joe cast Moses into water, although he was protected in the ark, the astrologer said, we no longer see in the stars anything like the sign we saw to the downfall of the leader of the Jews by water. Therefore, at that moment, they canceled the decree. But they did not know that what they foretold, that Moses would be stricken on account of the waters of the Meribah? Huh.
Well,
I was just reading this part. Doesn't it say what that is?
So the SOTA is part of the Talmud, or the teaching.
Okay.
It's the central text of rabbinic Judaism. Okay, so it was part of their...
Okay. Interesting.
I don't know if that's the Torah or not. I'm so bad. I
I need to be better about that.
Yeah, I'm not good with my history on that.
Me either. But that's just interesting to think of, like, okay, it ended shortly after, so
yeah,
maybe that would be why there was no pressure to, like, she was able to keep him because of his age and they canceled it. And according to this, the astrologers that the pharaohs would have used, which would have been a big thing for pharaohs to use, not Jewish people at the time, if they no longer saw the threat in their stars, they probably thought that they had rid of whoever of the uprising. Maybe. Interesting.
Okay. Well, that's all right.
I
Well,
think one thing that's interesting too is, like, how we were reading about the baskets, is the fact of, like, God using ordinary and his purpose still at work, even though there was something set against his people. There was murders happening, but, like, his purpose still prevailed. And I think it's really encouraging. Like, when we look at our life, like, all the hard things and things that come against us, like, the purpose of God is still going to prevail. And then Hebrews 11:23 says that Moses' mother and father acted by faith. Their one goal was to protect and save their child. I think, and I know I can't answer to this about, like, fear and or how faith plays a role in child rearing, but I think it makes us look at how do we respond by faith to our fears. And I think that's something to kind of look at amongst the story of, and maybe self-reflect of, are there anything, have you noticed God come through in your fears, and what happens when you walk by faith instead of fear?
yeah.
Kind of thing, like making us look at that. So I think that's, like, a good question to ask yourself is, am I walking by faith or am I walking by fear? Because God tells us to walk by faith and not by fear. And if I'm being led by fear, then it's not him leading me.
Right.
So anyways,
That's good.
Interesting story. So this is all takes place. If you want to go and reference the story, it is Exodus 2 is going to be your big bulk of the story. And then Hebrews 11 is where it kind of talks about the back end, what happened and how they move by faith. So
that's good.
Which is just crazy. So a little Bible study for today, a little different kind of topic and episode, but
let me see. Let me see something else here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. She's Googling.
Yeah.
And this, for anybody who's looking, this Women of the Bible Bible study that I got, I got it off Amazon, and it's like a journal entry and all those things that highly recommend. And it's by Jean, Jeane, and then Swierda. It's Syswerda. What'd you find?
Good.
Did you find what you were looking for?
Well, oh my gosh, that was such a long pause. I'm sorry if you're listening. I'm totally just.
Well, this is also us doing a different style too. So thank you for your patience with us as we navigate this.
I mean, I guess it's just like it's just stuff we've kind of already talked about. Yeah. Oopsies. What lessons can we learn from the story of Moses about obedience to God, even when it's difficult? Ooh. That's good.
Or I think even looking at when we don't see hope, like I feel like Joe had to have known, like my child could, if this basket doesn't hold, my child could be gone. And so that like that huge risk of,
if
I'm missing God on this, my child's gone.
Yeah.
And how many times do we get into life and different things? It's like, if I'm missing God on this, worst case scenario is going to happen.
Yeah, that answers another question that says, like, how does this story show the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it means going against authority?
Ooh.
Yeah. But the lessons we can learn from the story of Moses about obedience to God, even when it's difficult. I think that one of those lessons is that, and it's a hard lesson to learn, is that when we're obedient, it's like we only get to take part in part of the story. Sometimes we don't get to see the outcome, and we may not get to be part of it. And so I think that in and of itself can be pretty challenging, but at its core, it's like that, we've talked about it a lot, where it's like we're on a need to know basis with God. And honestly, in the Old Testament, I'm doing what he says.
Right.
If Joe thought she heard the Lord tell her to do that, she had to have.
Or that like a God-inspired idea of.
Yeah. Just sort of do that.
And how cool to see, like she got to see the end of it. Realistically, to a point where her daughter,
she knew he was going to be safe, and it's kind of like that is all she got to know.
Yeah.
I'm sure she like tracked and got to hear about him as he was growing up and stuff like that.
Because he did have a what's the word I'm looking for?
Question comes to mind is like, oh, did they ever? I mean, like, he knew he was Hebrew.
Did he know that was his mom?
Did he ever come into contact with his mom after, like when he was old enough?
Yeah.
Or was he too busy killing people and running away?
Burying them in the sand.
Did that. You know? God uses the worst of us.
He uses the worst of us to bring out his plan. I mean, realistically,
to bring about his plans. Yes, that's for sure.
And he's in the middle of it too. So I think and I think kind of the beautiful thing, like if we look at God's character, once Moses ran from that and he went into the wilderness where he found his wife, he became a shepherd. He was living there. When it was time, like God spoke to him through a burning bush, and it wasn't like, hey, Moses, I'm going to reprimand you for the past however many years you've been out here. He said, okay, Moses, it's time. You know, like just like the characteristic of God is, I feel like he often says like, okay, it's time versus, like, I think he's so well aware of our humanity.
He's like, all right, that's enough.
All right, that's enough. It's time for me to like move on my behalf, like, on what I'm going to do now.
That's funny because that reminds me of another episode that we recorded that, gosh, what were we talking about? Wasn't peer pressure, was it?
Oh.
Like applying pressure to ourselves?
Oh, yeah, peer pressure. Yeah, we were talking about that in that one.
Yeah, but where I was speaking to you, like, yeah, it might have been that one.
Yeah.
Where it was like, you know, you're just to, like, let it go. You said something about how you were feeling like you were in a different, that's right, it was. It was like you were feeling like you were in a different phase in life and things just weren't going how you thought. And it's like all these other, you know, ways that you coped in the past. And we were talking about how they were like, those are just like bandages on old wounds, but the wound is like healing and starting to close up and there isn't a need for the bandage anymore. Right. So it's like, God's like, no, we're done with that. Right. Time to move on to something else.
It makes me think of Lion King when Rafiki is talking to Simba and he sends him back. And then when Simba's born too, and he goes, it is time. And he takes the fruit and he like smears it, but whatever. But I love, like, I feel like sometimes that does represent of like where those moments where God's like, all right, it's time to go. Like you've done like long enough. Let's go back. And
you've been out here wilding
out. Let's go. Let's go.
Time to go.
Anyways, but no, I think I look at the story and I'm like, man, I would love to have the faith that Jill had, that even if it didn't make sense or there was a ton of fear attached to it. I heard this the other day on a Better Together series, but they said so many times we want the miracle, but we never want to be in the position that requires the miracle. And I was like, oh, that's so good. True. So it's like so many times it's like, Lord, I want to see you move. I want to see you come through. I want to see your hand on this. I want to fill in the blank. And
I just want to be on the other side of it though.
Right.
I don't want to be part of the process.
Right. And then it's realizing that, okay, in order for me to see a miracle, I have to be facing something that requires that. And oftentimes we don't want to be in that position, but that position is where he gets glory. And where he can do things.
Where he does all the work.
Where he does all the work is when we can't.
And it's the worst.
So it's the worst. So
I just can't imagine like handing my baby over to the enemy for one.
Right.
Well, first of all, putting him in a dangerous river.
Yeah.
And second of all, seeing that, you know, even if she got to take care of him for a period of time, it's like, I don't know, that woman is like seemingly the enemy, and then having to go into the enemy's house and like take care of your child and then like leaving him knowing that like
what's going to be imparted in him, all those things.
Yeah. She had to have been a very strong woman of faith. That's for sure.
And I think, I've had,
or maybe there's something about the daughter's reputation that they're like, you know,
right. Maybe
like,
she was
this isn't the worst thing in the world. Her dad might be a horrible person, but
maybe she's just genuinely kind and all that. I think that, and there's a question on here where it says like, what part does faith play in child rearing? What's your greatest fear for your child? And I can think of like a lot of moms. And like I said, I am not a mom right now, so I cannot speak to this, but so many moms who have been in situations where like their child has gone astray or they're in their prodigal years. Like how hard that is, but not to downplay what prayer does. And, like what's the verse where it says in their old age, raise a child up in the way that they should go, and in their old age, it will not depart from them. Where it's like in their old age, but it doesn't talk about the in between. So I, if it's any help, I would, challenge you to read and look at her if you are a mom in that situation, or find other moms who have been in that situation and their child has come back to the Lord, so you can build up your faith and know that he does do that and he does move in that way.
Yeah. And that's referenced Hebrews 11:23, which just says it was by faith that Moses' parents hid him for 3 months when he was born. They saw that God had given them an unusual child, and they were not afraid to disobey the king's command. So honestly, what's kind of cool is it goes on to say it was by faith that Moses, when he grew up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to share the oppression of God's people instead of enjoying the fleeting pleasures of sin. He thought it was better to suffer for the sake of Christ than to own the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking ahead to his great reward.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking about, like, all right, so these his parents, even before he was born, so that's the interesting thing here.
Yeah.
His parents were so full of faith, and like they were obviously very prayerful, God-fearing people. You know, it's important what you are speaking over your child, even in the womb.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much impact that you can have praying over your child before they even come in.
Oh my gosh.
Before you even conceive. Like, I mean, I've definitely prayed for my future children already.
Same.
And like, you know,
100%.
I just think about, it's funny because it says, you know, what part does faith play in child rearing? It's a funny question to me because it's like, from what I've witnessed of my sister raising two boys that are, I think they're barely 2 years apart. They're like just over 2 years apart. My gosh, that is just, parenthood is an entire exercise,
Like faith journey
in faith.
alone.
That's a whole like, hey, you want a side quest of
Let's go.
faith by fire? Well, here's some kids, like have them. And it's your responsibility
Good luck.
for their lives and how
Sheesh.
they turn out in society. Well, at least it's, you know,
To a certain point.
to a certain extent. But that's, you know, also the importance of, you know, praying over your children and stuff. And like you said, you know, I mean, neither one of us have kids at this point of this recording. And yeah, it's like, what's your greatest fear for your child if you have them, and how can you by faith respond to your fears? Well, goodness, I don't even have kids. And when I look at that question, I think of so many, not just for like their physical health and well-being and spiritual well-being too. It's just like, I don't know. Like I
do.
where do you start?
Right. I'm like, I want my kids to love Jesus. Because at that point too, I feel like, okay, if you love Jesus, I don't know. But there's that control piece. If you love Jesus, then I know you're going to be okay. Well, what happens if there's a season in their life where they don't? Am I going to trust God with them?
Yeah.
Or praying that they don't, praying that they love Jesus all the days of their life.
I just hope that my child doesn't turn out to be awful.
They're not going to.
I don't know. Just to say, like you said, at some point there is a change where they have to start making decisions for themselves.
Right.
You can only do so much as a parent. I think that would be, I don't know, from a non-parent to somebody who used to be a non-parent, I guess, because you were anybody who's a mom now, like you were not a mom once. Right. And I don't know, I'd be speaking to you before you got pregnant, your pre-pregnant selves. Like, I don't know. That's all you can really do is you try and raise them the best way that you can, with all of the good aspects that you grew up with. Yeah. And try your best not to screw them up. I mean, I know that sounds kind of just like whatever, but
you do the best you can with what you
know. And this is you know, we're in a fallen world, and I think that, you know, there's going to be things that we aren't going to be able to safeguard our children against, and that is a horrifying thought because no one wants the most precious gift they were ever given on this earth to experience anything. I would oh my gosh, I would rather just be strung out over some coals than to have my future child experience some of the stuff that I've gone through in life. And I think that's, I mean, and I'm not even a parent yet, and like I feel that strongly about it. Like it's just heartbreaking to think about. Yeah. But also it's kind of like you can't let yourself sit there and dwell in that, because then again, fear is an emotion, right? But fear is also a spirit, because there is scripture that says we weren't given a spirit of fear. Right. So if we sit there and we're constantly afraid of like something happening to our child, then you're not doing anything to help them. You're entertaining a spirit of fear. And whatever that is doing is keeping you from being the effective parent that you need to be, I guess.
That's good. I feel like this would be a spot if you are a mom and you've had to walk through this, or you've had moments where you've had to like use faith within your children, we would love to hear from you. Like, can you send us a message? Make a comment. We want to know what that was like.
Yeah.
And
how do you by faith respond to those fears?
Yeah.
Like, I want to know.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
I'm
As somebody who
very
doesn't
curious.
have a kid, so that I can get some wisdom from some moms.
Yeah. Please share your wisdom with us, because
Lord willing, we'll have children
We'll
of
have
our own
yeah.
someday, and I'd love to get some wisdom on how other
Yeah.
moms, sort of just handle that, and that'd be great.
All the things. So please give us your mom wisdom.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we have for today, guys.
Short one today.
But if you looking for some women to spirit of faith, look at Joe.
The whole Joshua bed.
Yeah.
Jock bed.
All right, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.